the Newman City Council and Redevelopment Agency, regular meeting of August 23rd, 2005. Please stand for the pledge and remain standing for the invocation.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You join me and bow your heads in prayer. Dear God, tonight we just want to say thank you. It's not often that we give thanks in times of need. We want to thank you for those that are far and near in protection of our way of life, and we ask that you guide us in our decision-making process here this evening. Amen.
Thank you, Tim. Here we have roll call, please.
Present.
Present. Present. Present. Item 5, declaration of conflicts of interest. I have one this evening only because, let's see, which one is it? Item A under regular business, adopt resolution number 2005, a resolution which deals with Del Val Capital Corporation. I live within 500 feet of the property, so when that item comes up, I will be leaving the room.
I as well have that same conflict on item 10A. My conflict is due to my sale of that property.
Okay. Item 6, ceremonial matters. Recognition of Newman Explorers. Where did the chief go?
Be right back.
Oh, okay.
I believe, Mr. Mayor, that he was going to postpone that from this evening.
Okay. I know he had another item, but that's... Chief, your other item is under public comments? Non-agenda items?
Oh.
Is that what the other...
So I was looking at, are we looking at ceremonial matters? Would that be something I
Sure.
could- Okay. Got my sergeant on the way over here. Just want to make the council aware of, we had an incident over the weekend. I think it was handled very well. We had an armed robbery of the 99 cents or more store on our main street. Our sergeant, Johnny Lemus, was in charge of that investigation. We were able to not only get the perpetrator, here he is, but he was able to direct staff, and we were able to make a conclusion on this with an arrest. And this was done at knife point, and I'm sure leaving a few things out here. Johnny, could you tell us a little bit more about this incident? Put up the mic here, please.
Basically what we had is a armed robbery that took place in one of our businesses, the 99 cent store. We got a call, we responded. When we got on scene, we got the details from the victim as to what occurred inside the business. We were able to identify a suspect, and during the course of the investigation, we were able to actually take him into custody, and we got a confession and closed the case. There was several key officers besides myself that was involved. Officer Gosselin and Reserve Officer Jeremy Cooksey. Officer Cooksey had come in to assist, or actually he had come in to do some paperwork, and luckily he was there because we definitely needed him, and he was one of the key players, along with Officer Gosselin, that we were able to identify and eventually close the case.
It's nice when we have an incident of that nature and we're able to put closure to it that quickly. And just as a kind of a side note, Officer Jeremy Cooksey is one of our reserve officers. He's our individual we're doing a background on to put on full time. So he's we pressed him into service just a little bit quicker than he was anticipating. So it worked very well. I want to let you folks know that we had that before you read it in the paper, and to commend our sergeant on his diligence and is able to direct staff to put closure to that kind of a case.
Thank you
Good
very
job.
much, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, item 7, items from the public, non-agenda items. If anybody has anything that is not on the posted agenda that they would like to bring before us, please come to the podium. And I see Ken is at the podium.
My name is Ken Madenwald, 612 Waxman Lane. I'm speaking on behalf of the Orriston 50 Plus Club. We want to thank the city and the city council for the new tables and the new chairs. It has made a big difference for those people there and for the people having to work there. And so we just wanted to thank you.
You're welcome.
My name is Nancy Corgett. I live at 1343 Merced Street. And I'm speaking in regards to the START bus that picks up in front of my house. A few months ago, we became aware that the START bus was picking up people in front of our house. Recently, a bus stop sign was installed there as well, directly in front of our house. We were not given any notice of this, and much less a vote as to whether we wanted this bus stop there. Now the sign there, and which is in my opinion an eyesore in my front yard, now that it's there have been more and more people utilizing this bus stop. We have strangers loitering on the curb in front of our house, using our fence as a post to sit on, as a bench. But even though I'm saying that, please don't install a bench now that I said that, to go with it. The bus stops several times a day. I'm not sure exactly how many, but we counted several today. This is disturbing. We have small children at home. They enjoy playing outside, and we're not comfortable with that, with so much traffic right there of people, strangers out there. It would seem to me that there's many options for bus stops in this town other than the front of a residential home. There's a park 1 block north of my house that I would think would be more appropriate. There's many other public places available. I would think that would be a more logical solution. A couple of years ago, we remodeled our home and went through many steps to ensure that we wouldn't be imposing on our neighbors or creating an eyesore. I feel that this bus stop is an imposition to myself and to my neighbors and a definite eyesore. Thank you for your attention to this matter.
Thank you. We will definitely have staff look into that, and maybe the chief could also, when the bus schedule is going on, make a couple passes by there and see exactly what's going on over there, Chief, if you could, please.
Good evening, Mayor and council members, residents of Newman. I'm Bill Scroggins. I'm the interim president of Modesto Junior College. And first of all, I want to thank you and the citizens of Newman for supporting the Yosemite Community College District Measure E, our capital bond initiative. We appreciate your votes, and the West Side was the highest population that supported our vote in our service area. We really appreciate your support, and I appreciate your support as the president of Modesto Junior College. One of the projects that's associated with that bond initiative is the construction of a West Side Center, an educational center. We are pursuing some property for that center that is in Patterson, and hope to, within the next 3 years, actually have the center up and running. As part of what we're doing is in designing that facility, we want some input from yourselves as the leaders of the city of Newman and from the residents about what educational programs and services we would plan for that center. To that end, I brought with me tonight a survey that we're doing of residents. You may have seen this as an insert recently in the Patterson Irrigator. Also, within the next week, we'll have this survey online at our website, mjc.edu, to get input over the next few weeks from the citizens and residents of the area about what services you need. We're very concerned that you've got to drive all the way over to Modesto to get services. We know there's a lot of new residents to the community, a lot of new needs in existence. We want to be sure to be responsive to those needs. If I may, I would leave some of these copies with the clerk for your perusal and sharing with your colleagues, and I'd also like to distribute some copies of the survey to the audience, and I'd be willing to answer any questions you have about our work in forming the center here in West Side.
And we appreciate your plans, and like you say, it's going to be about 3 years, huh, till
Yes.
up and running.
It will be.
That'd be great.
Terrific. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let me pose one question, if I may.
Yes.
Just in terms of maybe perhaps satellite classes in the future, specifically here in Newman. If we were to develop a facility or a site per se, because we have some talks of joint interactions with our school district.
Yes.
How willing would the junior college district be in terms of perhaps facilitating a class actually on site here in Newman?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, no need to wait for that. We would be glad to entertain a partnership with the school district right away. If you identify a need, we'll have some conversations about how to meet that need.
Very good. Thank you.
we have eyes on your theater auditorium as well for possibly some performing arts instruction
Okay.
in
That'd
be
association
great.
with
There
our
you go,
site.
there's a
Yeah.
start.
There's a start right there, yeah. So, oh yeah,
You didn't feel like I really put you on the spot with that question, did I?
no, I was ready. I was ready.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other non-agenda items? Seeing none. Agenda items, when the item comes before us and you'd like to comment, please come to the podium and state your name and address and try to keep your comments to under 3 minutes. Item 8, public hearings. We have one this evening. We will adjourn to meet at the Newman Redevelopment Agency. Could we have roll call, please?
Board Member Parker,
Present.
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 Present. We will, tonight we will conduct a public hearing and adopt resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a disposition and development agreement between the agency and Mitchell and Janet Chuck.
Thank you, Chairman, board members of the Redevelopment Agency. Tonight we're here to approve a second disposition and development agreement with Mitchell and Janet Chuck. The first one was approved at the end of last year, and it included some language that stated that within 1 year, if the applicant had started the project and had fully leased the building space, that he could have an option on the second adjacent parcel, which fits and develops well with the first parcel. With that, Mr. Mitchell Chuck, or Mitch Chuck, is here today to state that he has fully leased out that building. In fact, he had planned to move his business here, and he's going to have to wait till the next parcel now. So with that, we concluded, again, the sales price was $70,000 an acre. When you total up all the costs, it actually came out to a little bit more. It was $70,000 and like $760. We will recover any additional funds at the $760 within 1 year of tax increment being in place. And so throughout the duration of this project, we will continue to receive tax increment. Also, he will come in and indicate some of the businesses that are coming in, but there's going to be some jobs generated as well as some sales tax revenue generated in there. A gentleman who came in today, who's a possible leasee of the next one, kind of restores and finds automobiles, and he has an excess of $1.5 million worth of sales on an annual basis, and he would like to move his business from Fremont to Newman. So he's a potential tenant for the next spot there. He currently lives in Gustine. So with that, the language is the same for in the disposition and development agreement as it was in the last one. So with that, I can entertain any questions that you may have. If you haven't been out to the business park lately, Mr. Norbert Rocha is up and going with his steel building. Mr. Chuck is up and going with his steel buildings over there. So it's a long time coming, but things seem to be picking up speed. And also, we've also distributed another 2 or 3 of the potential suitors for people who are looking for space. We have a package that we have passed out that kind of indicates a selection process, things that we'd like to see, uses we'd like to see out there, and gives them details on what kind of package they need to submit so we can do a review and see if they are a potential suitor for those 2 remaining sites located in the business park.
Michael, do you have an estimate on Mr. Chuck's completion date and occupancy before winter or close?
He indicated he's here tonight. He can answer that, but he says in September they'll be doing some inside framing, so the skin will be going up probably next week or the week after on the outside, and then they'll start framing on the inside. So
Sounds great. Any more questions for Michael?
Maybe if the applicant, Mr. Chuck, just a quick question for you. On the latter part of Michael's report, he was kind of alluding to how the city is looking for additional businesses or persons to come into the industrial park for development. Just
Yes.
curious to know, having fulfilled the contractual agreement, what was your method, or what did you do in terms of kind of soliciting to prospective leasees?
We originally we worked with Mike McNaughton here in town, talking to some people that he had met through that had come in his office, and we Actually, one of them was this Newman Machine Shop, which is going into Building B, I believe. And we ran some ads and put up a sign, and I've had a lot of people looking to move their business over here.
Now, when you ran your ads, were they distributed through the Bay or?
Mostly in the Modesto B,
Okay.
over in this valley here. But we have the Newman Machine Shop out of Turlock is coming here. Looks like Hard Drive Graphics is going to move from downtown over to Building A. A powder coating company from Oakland
Yeah, I
is
saw
going to be
that.
moving into town. And then Jim Silvera is going to be moving his business over there. And this other automotive placement detail, he has sort of a specialty thing where he purchases vehicles, boats, cars, trucks. Last week he brought Gallo some trucks. I don't know exactly how he does this, but he wants the additional 5,000 square feet.
This is the gentleman out of Fremont?
Out of Fremont, yeah. Yeah, so the building's coming along good. We finally got through the permit stage. And,
You say that with a sigh, huh?
yeah, we've got it. And, but the building's up. They're gonna put the skin on it. We're gonna start framing. We're doing the site utilities now, so we should be paving in probably about 6 weeks. PG&E's working on the gas and electric right now. And, so we should be wrapped up by November at the latest, because it's gonna start raining again, as we all know.
Well, I'd just like to add accolades to commend your efforts, being patient. Of course, when we first delved into this, I can recall, I don't know, 3, 4 to 5 years ago.
Yeah, it's been a while.
Yeah, some of you held out really well, along with Mr. Rocha.
Yeah, we're the
So you-
two
you're
survivors
one
out there.
of them. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for all your help
Thank you
and
very
patience
much,
as well.
Mitch. And if Michael's not helping you out in any way, let us know. With that, I will open the public hearing. Would anybody like to comment on this matter? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing and ask for some direction.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt a resolution approving and authorizing the execution of a disposition and development agreement between the agency and Mitchell and Janet Chuck.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item 9, consent calendar. Item A, approval of warrants. Item B, approval of minutes of the August 9th, 2005 record meeting. And item C, adopt resolution number 2005. Next number, a resolution declaring certain property surplus. The chief has told me he would like to pull C. He has a few items to add to that.
And
So,
I have to pull 9A, warrant number 029087 to Precision Inspection. They're my tenant at 1220 Main Street.
okay. Would we like to, let's approve, if we could, then the warrants. I mean, the warrants minus this one check and the minutes.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, motion passes. And the check number 029087 for precision inspection.
So moved as well.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion passes 4 with 1 not participating. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Yes, we had a couple of changes. What we thought was obsolete and not workable turned out to be something that one of our other departments had wanted.
You fixed them.
We have a number 3 on your attachment A, which is a round metal cabinet. The Public Works would like that to go to well 6. And number 11, which is 3 gray rectangular tables that we received from the fire department. The recreation department would like to have those for the youth center. And then also, I have supplied you with an attachment A addendum for some additional property that was given to me by the recreation department. They would like to get rid of as well. And one is an upright piano that's not repairable and is out of tune, and it costs more money to restore it than the value that it has. And they don't plan on using it for any of their programs. They have a blue and white striped sofa and love seat that's very well used, and it's broken down and beyond repairs, and they've also had a replacement for that. They also have a pool table that was donated to them at one time, and they have a new donation that's much better shape than the one that they had, and they'd like to get rid of the existing pool table. And those are the only other items that were added. So if you approve that, a resolution, that would be in addition to the addendum 2 as well.
One question.
Yes.
How do you dispose of the surplus property?
We have various ways. Part of it, if it doesn't have any value and it's not repairable, it gets, we take it to the dump. Some of this property we either sell out or it's donated to schools or other organizations, and sometimes we just sell it outright through a bid process.
Rather than take it, I imagine we're charged at the dump for taking it up there.
Yes, we are.
What if we held on to that property until we had our spring and fall cleanup and disposed of it at that time, then there'd be no charge to us?
I'm sure that we could do that. I could work that out with Ernie.
Is that possible? I mean, do we have the space to do that? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
If there's no more questions, could we have some direction, and we will have to add the changes and also attachment A?
I move that we adopt resolution number 2005, next number, resolution declaring certain property surplus with the appropriate attachments.
Second that motion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. 10, regular business. The first item is the one that I have a conflict with, so I will be turning the meeting over to the Mayor Pro Tem. Tim.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We'll be hearing item 10A, regular business, a resolution regarding subdivision improvement agreement with the Del Val Capital Corporation and adopting final map 03-2 Monte Vista Estates. We'll hear from staff.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Parker. Tonight we have a final map in the subdivision improvement agreement before you. This project was originally improved in the fall of 2003. It has since undergone some changes that I've pointed out in your staff report. We'd like to go over some of those changes with you if you'd like, and we'll kind of walk you through those. The city engineer who is charged with making the finding that the map substantially conforms with the vesting tentative map has done so and has indicated that he is ready to sign the final map. In addition, last week, I believe, or maybe the week before, Ernie and I met with Mr. Bill Henry. Bill Henry is the engineer project on this. He's the former engineer for the city of Newman. At the time that this project was being processed, GDR, Mr. Gary Davis from GDR Engineering had done work for the applicant in the past, so therefore was by law no longer allowed to work on the project to be a city engineer on there. So at the recommendation of Mr. Garza and then the previous city manager, we asked Bill Henry to come back, as he is very familiar with our community and that particular site, as he has processed some areas in that projects on that map. So with that, I'll just pass out this little memo that he sent, and then it'll help guide you kind of why some of those changes were made and what they are. We'll go through the changes on the map first before we proceed forward with some of the rest of the presentation. So this is the map as it is currently in form, and the one that's being brought before you. Originally there was 41 lots on this project site. There are actually 40 lots plus this remainder lot. This lot A here is being proposed probably as a phase 2 and has a capability of being an additional 3 lots, so it would be up to 43 lots, so less than a 5% increase on there. What we looked at and some of the changes, and I'll go to the other map in a minute, that we looked at, or the city engineer looked at, but one of the major changes is this is in this location here. If you could go to the next slide, it might show it better. Thank you. Up here in Lot A, that's going to be now the storm drainage basin in that location. Originally, the storm drainage basin was located in this area. If you'll go to the next slide real quick. Oh, it's kind of turned, I apologize. But it was located in this here, and we had 4 lots up here. So if you can go back. So originally there was 4 lots facing this street here, which is Monte Vista Avenue, and then the park basin was located in this particular location. These 2 properties here were concerned about lots backing up to a park on the original map, so they asked for a wood fence being brought up there. One of the conditions of approval on this particular final development plan, if you will include a complete new 6-foot tall wood fence along that property line for everybody. One of the other issues that went through, the engineers are the ones that kind of came up with this design and moving the location of the basin, and the project engineers here, and he can discuss with you his conversation with the city engineer. Lots of that, the reasons for moving this is originally the water was going to come into this basin, get pumped up, and go into a storage, a storm drainage line, come over here, down this way, and then pumped again into the CCID facility. Under this plan, that pump station has been eliminated. There's only 1 pump station down here at the end. And when that property in that area develops over there, that pump station goes away entirely. So this would be a completely gravity-served system. In addition to that, as Mr. Henry indicates in his letter to Ernie and I, that this basin now is sized to serve all undeveloped properties in that area. So that would include the 2 adjacent properties, the 2, I think Mr. Liu, they're about 2.5 acre parcels on that side, and there's another 1.5 acre parcel on Hardin Road can now be served with this. Again, that's another benefit of coming to this. Originally, when we looked at the first map, this showed as a cul-de-sac here, and then there was another cul-de-sac serving here. What they've done is connected those 2 cul-de-sacs here, and it provides for better emergency access, provides for better patrol, but it also knocks off a bunch of houses that were fronting on this road. This road is going to be well used, as anyone in the neighborhood knows that the high school only has 1 way in and 1 way out. So, you know, we heard lots of talk about how much traffic there is, and that's because they went in a circular system. Yellow Middle School and the high school, all that traffic was kind of stuck in there without another outlet. This will be another outlet here, so cars and buses can come out here and go to Fig Lane. They can come down Fig Lane and go out Jensen, even though it's a underdeveloped road at this time, that still provides access all the way out to the highway. So one of the other things was to try to eliminate as many houses as possible on there. Also, by providing this design here, by these angles here, it's going to slow down traffic a lot as well. The cars aren't going to be able to speed through there as much because of those angles that are now on there. So instead of having 4 houses here that are probably would have been within 15 feet of this property line, 15 to 20 feet, you now only have these 2 houses, and as you can tell, they've been angled away, and this is 10 feet here. They're approximately 35 feet away from that property line, these 2 houses here. So they'll be 2-story, but they'll be a significant distance away from those property lines. One of the other things that led to this is, for most of you that know that site and know the history of that site, it was a rather low, basically a hole in the ground. And there was speculation of where that dirt went, and some of it may have went over to the Stevens Avenue development on that site. But as Mr. Henry indicated in his letter, there's a federal law. They don't allow houses to be built within a floodplain now. So you have to raise those pads above a base flood elevation. They have to be 12 inches above the base flood elevation. So the project engineer, Mr. Henry, what they had to do is they had to survey the whole area and figure out what the base flood level was, and then go 12 inches above that. And as Mr. Henry indicated in his letter, that elevation is around 92 feet on this side over here, so they had to raise up those pad levels. So what you're finding is, and there's going to be some retaining that needs to go here because this side had to be raised so high. Basically, some of it was at 87, was even lower, maybe 86, 85 feet. So they had to bring lots of dirt in, and anybody who was in the neighborhood could testify that they probably constant trucks for 4 or 5 days, constantly bringing truckloads of dirt in here. And so, and that'll be similar to what happens if in the future these project sites that are underutilized in that area right now, if they ever decide that they want to vacate those sites and they do develop, the same thing will happen. They'll have to bring in a ton of dirt to bring it up to those levels there. So I guess with that, I've kind of walked you through how this project has come to be in its current state, and I could take any questions that you may have at this time about that. Also, if I may, I'll just touch on the conditions of approval. We attach those to you as well. There's some sewer supplemental fees, which is now a standard issue on new projects. The sewer supplemental fee is $2,500 per lot. There's a downtown plaza fee of $500 per lot. And then we have the general plan fee, which is 1/10 of 1% of the value of the structure. So those generally work out in the $200 to $250 per permit fee, and those go to the 3 citywide sponsored projects. So. And then also, just to kind of show you some of the stuff that we got, this is a letter from FEMA basically telling the city that they had, that site had to be filled up in order to get out of the floodplain on there. So with that, I can entertain any questions that any of the council members may have.
I think I'd like to defer to my colleagues for questions, but before I do that, just one further clarification, if you possibly could clarify, and the city manager may want to jump in here. I went out to that site where it's been graded already. However, there was a caveat upon them beginning the grading before the final map was approved. And so I would like that to be explained by virtue of the city manager or you in
Sure.
terms of them doing that.
Sure. To date, their improvement plans have not been signed because we needed to go through this final development plan, final map process. They requested that they could do a rough grade at their own risk, knowing that they still needed to go through this process and get these approvals, and they elected to proceed forward and bring that in. So it's a rough grade out there, so that is why they understood that they were taking the risk and that they were going to have to come before this council.
And just for procedural purposes, I'll defer to the city attorney. Because we're down to a quorum of 3 with the absence of the mayor and council member Marquez, when this comes for an action or not an action, what's our procedure down to 3 as a quorum?
You still need, you mean to pass?
Yes.
You
Is it
need
a straight-
3 under a quirk that they keep saying they're going to fix in the government code. It used to be resolutions or payments for money were the only things that needed 3. They added a comma after resolution. So now the interpretation is resolutions need 3 votes.
So it would have to be unanimous one way or another. Okay, thank you. And so now I'd open this up for questions from my colleagues or discussion.
Michael, being the youngest member, the newest member, I should say. No, not quite the youngest.
Yeah, I was going to argue.
Being the newest member, There's certain things that I don't understand, and maybe you can help me. I realize that they did this grading on their own. But is it normal procedure, is it normal practice to deviate from a tentative map and do an expansion like that and then come to the city council and expect to get approval?
There is precedent that there are minor revisions to tentative maps. One being the Sherman Ranch project that came before you not too long ago. There were some revisions done to that map, again, because of some existing conditions that need to be dealt with, and that was the underground tile drain system. So they did come back and revise their map. Again, what the process is the city engineer needs to make the substantial conformance law. So what we talk about and what we look at is how many lots are there on the original map, how many lots are on the final map. What are the major circulation roads, east-west, north-south. We look at lotting patterns, we look at lotting size, we look at all these different aspects, and then he ultimately makes a final determination as to whether that map substantially conforms to the tentative map.
But it's still up to our approval.
Well, what you can do is you can make the finding that this map does not substantially conform to the tentative map. That would be the finding you would need to make to not approve this map unless the city engineer is telling me otherwise.
This is something that the other two members is, Tom, you have a comment?
I was just going to say, after the tentative map state, when the final comes back to you, that's really a ministerial act. If the engineer says it's in substantial conformance, again, it's basically a checkoff for you at that point. Unless there is some evidence of some deviation.
Well, I think we're, in this case, we have, at least in my opinion, an existing problem or a concern that will be addressed tonight, and it has to do with changing of that map. And we have the residents of those two parcels here, and I know they'd like to comment. Mayor Pro Tem, would you like that now, or Bob, do you have some questions you'd like to
No, I'm
ask
fine,
her?
just proceed.
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
I actually was out there on that site, and I understand looking at the lots 599 Fig and 615 Fig, and certainly if you're here present tonight, we welcome you. Yes, ma'am. Just state your name, please, and your address for the record.
Okay, my name is Juanita Serpa, 615 Fig Lane. When we came to the meeting, we came to the planning meetings.
Excuse me, pull that microphone down just a little bit, please. Juanita.
Okay, we came to the planning commission meetings, and then we came to the city council meetings. At that time, the drainage area was to be behind my home and Sequoia's. Also, the homes were to be single-story. Now the area, the drainage system is here. For anybody that wants to know, I took pictures showing how much this land has been built up against my house. Here is my fence. I put my granddaughter in there, so just to give you an idea. Here's my fence, and here is the dirt built right up along my back fence. It's about 5 feet from my property. If anybody wants. Sure. Okay, there's going to put a 4 to 5 foot retaining wall. And now that the land is built up, they're going to put an additional 6 foot fence, making it 10 feet high. Now I hear, just now, that the houses are 2-story. So we're having these 2-story homes right behind my house. I'm going to have absolutely no privacy whatsoever. I'm sorry.
Take your time.
I get very emotional. I would like to see that drainage area put back behind my house. Number one, the retaining wall, or excuse me, the the retaining wall will be there. And then there will be that area where I will have a little bit of privacy, a little bit of freedom. I have my horse, which is about what I've got left. I guess you guys know I lost my husband recently. So that would give me some privacy. It would give me some area so that I'm not having people looking and seeing everything I do, because I spend most of my time in the backyard. I feel that also that area is going to be putting me in a prison-like state. There's going to be I'm going to be totally isolated. I won't be able to see the mountains. I won't be able to see anything. And I'd like to know, when did they give these guys permission to go from single story to two-story? And why were we not notified that they were making that change of the drainage area? Because I thought with that area, at least I've got a little bit of privacy. I've got a little bit of air to breathe. And I have a little bit of a lifestyle, which by building those homes, I'm not going to have. I've just totally gone blank. I'm sorry. But anyway, I think before they make these changes, I mean, I'm out there, and it wasn't just 5 days. It was day after day after day that these trucks were going back and forth and back and forth. And, you know, I figured, well, that's just the way things are. You know, they're going to build it. So just, you know, be a good sport about it. You know, if you have to dust every day or clean your air conditioner filter every other day, that's the way it is. You know, be a good sport. Be a good citizen. And then I get this, like I've been slapped in the face. You know, no notice. Single story to double story. 10 feet of wall behind my home. And it's just not right. You know, it's just not right. And whatever else thought I was going to say, I totally forgot. So anyway, I would like to be kept up to date on what goes on.
Thank you, Mrs. Serper, I want to let you know we understand your concerns, and thank you very much for coming and expressing them to us. I had the opportunity to go out there and look at the property, talk to Mrs. Serpa, and she's absolutely right. She's going to have a 10-foot fence in her backyard. She's not going to have any more blue sky. She has horses out there. There's going to be a 6-foot fence if people don't like their horses. It's very possible they could throw things over it. And I'm sure in the future there's going to be complaints about the horse's noise, the flies, the dust it makes. And I can understand her saying, all right, if the pond's there, it'll give me a buffer. I don't particularly care for these houses in this area, but I'll go along with it. Now, unbeknown to her, things have changed. And Michael, that kind of gets back to my original question of how things can change like that with no public hearing involved. And if somebody really wasn't watching or paying attention, this would be approved, and all of a sudden, in the case of Mrs. Serpa or somebody like her, would go, oh my God, what happened?
Just for clarification, Councilman, are you talking about the combination of moving the house, the basin/houses, and the raise of the elevation, or is? I guess we can talk about both.
Well, everything involved in that whole area of that project, moving the pond, going to 2-story houses. Another point, I understand you moved the pond for convenience so there wouldn't have to be an additional lift station, and also to access further properties. My feeling is every development stands on its own. If they need a lift pump, if they need 20 lift pumps, they form an improvement district in that subdivision. They take care of their own property. If the next piece of property decides to come in, they take care of their own. Everybody should stand on their own.
You're correct, Councilman. What we do is a landscaping lighting district, and you saw that recently with Sherman Ranch, and we added all these pump stations in and the cost of maintaining those. It is still staff city staff that goes out and does these maintenance on these particular facilities. And speaking with Mr. Henry and one of the reasons him and the project engineer again relocated that, they were just trying to implement, for lack of a better word, what some people are use the term of smart growth, where you try to plan so future projects can utilize the same utility, or in this particular case, it's a storm drainage basin facility. So that way it's not, you don't have a small one here and you have another small one here and you have another small one here that eats up staff time in maintaining those, not only with the pump stations, but by mowing the grass and those types of things. That was another one of the reasons why they tried to move that facility. Also, in addition, I don't know which house, it's Mrs. Serpas, and I apologize, but originally there's 4 houses right here in this particular location that backed up to this particular property right here. So there's actually a reduction in the total number of homes that are adjoining those 2 properties. And in addition, those two, going from 4 to 2, those 2 homes are now further away from those 2 properties than the first 4 would have been under the original development. So, and again, and I understand Mrs. Serpa's concern with the wall. No one wants something like that in their backyard, but again, that's a federal mandate that's coming down.
Yeah, I could understand that. Of course, there again, the houses would be on the north side. When you get up in the morning, what direction do you look? And when you go to bed at night, what direction do you look? Do you look north and south, or do you look east and west? You look at the sun rise and you look at the sun going down. So my thinking would be exactly the same as hers. I would not want either west or east view encumbered.
Bob? Oh, the only thing that concerns me is that there was no notification to the resident. And I think this is important because I'm sure she was following this very closely and would have liked to have been informed. So it didn't really give her the opportunity to express her concerns. And I don't quite understand how that occurred, but I think that something like that should not occur and that we should be very careful, and that when there is changes made to a subdivision like this, that the residents are informed.
I think even more importantly, that we could have been informed rather than having this discussion here tonight at the meeting. And that's why I preferenced my statement at the beginning in terms of the city manager alluding to and our community director alluding to them taking a risk, because that's what they did. They were taking a risk when they went ahead and started grading, and they graded in the sense that although, and my condolences to you, Mrs. Serpa, the loss of your husband, but there's something that you stated that I can greatly appreciate, and I thank you for. You talked about being a good sport. You talked about being a good citizen. And there's something else that you can step out on, and that's good faith. You stepped out on good faith that the things that have been presented to you in a tentative map, as have been presented to this council that I have here, as Marquez Manor, this is the original map. This is what I understood. And when you talk about the basin, this is what I understood in relation to your property, in relations to the street names, which have been changed on the package in front of me, which I don't agree with. The city has the autonomy to name our streets in the city of Newman. We name our parks, we name our streets, and oftentimes, you know, we just kind of say, when a developer comes in, they come in with their plans, and we pretty much say, that's fine, that's okay. We can go along with that, but alluding to my colleague there, sometimes we can't go along with it. There is an impact. Now, in this staff report, it refers to safety and a better egress and ingress. In other words, you can get around that neighborhood better, maybe with a fire truck, rather than coming through with the cul-de-sac. And it is a thoroughfare, but as it was originally stated as Maria Drive, you can still get from Hardin all the way through over to Fig, as it was stated in the original map. And with the constructions that's going on with the school over there, yeah, there's going to be traffic impacts. But getting back to the heart of the matter, there were a couple of concerns when I went out there and looked at the site. I spent some time out there this afternoon, and I understand this conditional letter of map revision based on the field. The way those properties sit now, 599 and 615, they almost look like a retention basin next to those properties, the way that the land has been raised, almost like a levee. So my question in terms of the developer that's here for the property, and to you as well, Michael, when our engineer went through this and we talk about a floodplain and that retention basin, will there be an impact on those properties as well, the way they sit? Because I know that property, before it was graded, before any of that was done, it sat like that as well. And the only reason it's been raised is for, and let me clarify, I support infill projects. I support, rather than us continue to expand over prime farmland, over ag land, and annexing and growing, to kind of try to do something with some of the land that's already there. So I supported this project based on that. But given those questions that I posed and the concerns that have been raised and the change, what do we have to say that the town floods again and all the water from that area goes into their property as well? Is there any?
Yeah, there are some safeguards in there. I'd like to defer to Mr. Ryan Carroll, who may know a little bit more about them, but I'll talk briefly on it and he can correct me if I'm wrong. The system, the way it goes is it comes into the pipe systems, and gravity flows out this way. There's also a storm drainage basin that this will back into and fill up this storm drainage basin. In addition to that, there's a storm drainage line that comes here and extends down to here where there's some curb and gutter and then opens up. So if, for instance, we have a 500-year flood, all the line surcharge, it backs up into the basin, and then you're like, well, what happens then? Well, then it gets into this line here, comes down this way, comes out of the grate, and heads out that way, opposite direction of the two subject properties. So they really are confined that this whole, any water that's in this area and down here will not find its way over to that particular project. What they would be subject to is less than what they would have would be any rainfall on the road here and then any rainfall that fell on their property. That's essentially the extent of the amount of flooding that would take place on their particular project, unless the project engineer has any further guidance. So they're actually creating basically a barrier on both sides. And I wasn't here during the flooding, and Mr. Garza could correct me if I'm wrong, but I think a lot of this water came down this way and came in from this way and then flooded this particular site here. So again, if that were to occur similar to the 95 and 98 flood areas, then all this water would go into this system, come down and go over here. If for some reason it was able to back up this whole thing, and again its size to handle additional developed property, it would back up into an existing underground storm drainage line, come out a grate here, and then continue to flow southward towards Ruth and go into the curb and then flow further into the storm drainage basin system.
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Kelly Selman. I live on 1058 S Street, and I'm not born and raised, but raised on 615 Big Lane. In 95, the water came in from the backside, and there was flooding in around the houses, probably 4 to 5 inches. The horses had to be evacuated because we didn't know how much water was coming in. So now you're right, they are in a hole. And I don't know if this is part of the conversation or not, but originally when this plan was addressed, there were to be disclosures. This disclosure was, this is a floodplain. Disclosure was, we're going to bring dirt in and we're going to compress it. People ought to be given the compression rate. So they need to know it's on a floodplain and a compression rate, and the animals stay. So if you don't like dust, you don't like horse shit, and you don't like flies, don't move in. And I'd like to see those disclosures when the time is right, in writing, because if I don't, then there'll be a sign in the fence, just like F&A, that says, the horse stays. If you don't like horse shit, you don't like flies, you don't like dust, don't live here. So the flooding does happen there. It came in from the backside, not the front side. There was minimal flooding in 1995 and substantial flooding in 1998.
Thank you. And you know, as our First Amendment's rights allow for expletives, I sometimes actually want to use a few myself, but I won't. But thank you. And given that, Michael, you wanted to address this again?
No, I was just making the point that I thought that the water had come in here, and I came in, I said also down here, which would have been the backside. So again, these would be raised up, and this would be higher, so this will be lower. So the water, if the water comes in from her backside, it comes down this way, down the streets, and then out that way.
How about her question about the land being raised? In other words, with it being raised, what that did was evaded it being declared a flood zone. Am I correct in that assessment?
Yeah, FEMA wants you to raise houses outside of the floodplain. So what you have to do is the engineers work together, establish by surveying the whole area out there, they establish what a base flood elevation is. In this particular case, I think they established it, and it probably states in that letter that I gave you, it was like 91.5 or 92 feet. And then FEMA wants you to go another, the building house pads to go another 12 inches above that.
Okay. I guess, were there any further comments? Mr. Krinklaw, Mr. Martina? I guess from this point, the developer, you've gotten a pretty much a mouthful. And in all fairness and relying upon the words Mrs. Serpa used, we like to be good sports. We like to be good citizens. You're in a defensive mode because what I've taken from the comments that I've currently heard is an off-take of what we were originally shown. And granted, our former city engineer, Mr. Bill Henry, has a letter here and said that these changes were nominal and they may conform to an extent, but you've just heard the arguments against that to a great degree. So in all fairness to you, certainly, if you'd like to address this, we welcome your rebuttal.
I'm Tony Rosenthal. I'm the Chief Operation Officer for Del Valle Homes. I have been with this project since the first day, and I'm the gentleman who said that there will be a disclosure. And you have a right to farm law here. You have to disclose that. That's just the way it works. Now, if I remember correctly, one of the things that we were told is that when the bad flood came, it went this way. Is that correct? That the flood went this way. Where the basin was located, it would not have accepted that water that way. So the basin itself, where it was located, once you get out and you shoot the site, it wasn't going to work. So what we then did is then move the basin based on the comments that were made through the tentative map process and the approval to the lowest spot so that we could pick up everything. So the movement of the basin from here to here was generated by the comments made at the tentative map approval. Okay, so that's the first thing I want to say. The second thing is when we talked about this being in a floodplain, okay, our understanding was when we were initiating this and we designed the thing completely, that we designed it at a lower elevation than what Mr. Henry came back to us and asked us to raise that to. Would that be an accurate statement, Ryan? Okay. I just kind of want to walk you through the process of how these things got, where they got, and we're doing this based on design which the neighbors that I had understood had said to us, be aware that the water goes like this, be aware that the traffic's like that, and that's what we try to kind of get on our final map.
My name is Ryan Carroll, consulting civil engineer for Del Valle Homes. Just to supplement what Mr. Rosenthal was stating, at the time the tentative map was prepared, the city had required a more detailed look at how this drainage would work because it was a concern at the time the tentative map was drawn. Tentative pad grades were established in conjunction with the tentative map. That level of design typically isn't prepared at a tentative map stage, but it was a concern. So the applicant had essentially a tentative grading plan prepared with the tentative map. Once the tentative map approval process was completed and we moved forward with actual civil design, we obviously took a closer look at the constraints, the design constraints for grading, and realized that the project property was situated in the designated floodplain. And at that time, we realized that we needed to apply for the conditional letter of map revision based upon fill to raise those lots out of the floodplain. So although the grades were shown on the tentative map, they were not based upon an engineered design per se to meet FEMA standards. The engineered plans, which the site grading was based upon, is based upon an actual engineered design to FEMA standards.
Mr. Carroll, you're an engineer?
That is correct. I'm with Associated Engineering, 4206 Technology Drive, Modesto.
Very good. I guess the question I want to pose to you then, when you applied for the conditional letter with FEMA in terms of it being in the flood zone, if you had not done that, if you had gone through with the tentative map as graded as done, then those persons there, could you have done that? First is the first question, and then number two, then there would have to be an acknowledgement that, hey, your property is in a flood zone.
That's correct, and it's my understanding that there are certain insurance implications to residing within the floodplain.
Okay, and so therefore, the homeowners that would conceivably purchase there no longer have to abide by those insurance requirements because it's been raised according to this conditional acceptance letter.
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And I just want you to get an idea, because now you have an idea. Yeah, the homes could have been built there with a disclosure that you are in a floodplain. Then there would have been a requirement, as there has been on some certain regards, because our town is flooded twice. You may get one of those notices because they're a little leery whether we'll get another 100-year flood. But I just wanted for you to have that clarification in layman terms, that it makes a little more sense. Those homes were raised to a certain degree, that the impact on whomever buys those homes now, they're no longer required to have flood insurance. And I correct me if I'm wrong in my assessment of that, but that's how I read it.
That is correct, yes.
Okay.
And I would like to address the one comment regarding the overall drainage area in this lower lying area. With these public improvements, the storm drainage system as designed will significantly reduce the amount of stormwater that would be laying and inundating this area. I'm personally not familiar with the historical drainage patterns here, but taking this entire area out of essentially a hole and putting it onto a positive city-maintained drainage system will dramatically reduce the runoff that would be seen on these remaining lower lots that may have historically drained from this project property onto those lots. Well, I do want to re-emphasize the fact that the base flood elevation is above all of this area, so it theoretically could have.
Let me move on. So I based on the comments that we got from the citizens, and based on the comments that we got from the engineering staff, that's how this basin gets moved to here. Okay? So that's the first thing. Second thing is the economics, and I'm not talking about my economics, I'm talking about your economics.
Okay.
Okay? Is that based on this being here, you had to actually take the water from a lower place, pump it to a higher place. Okay? So you're pumping the water up and you're pumping the water out. So in essence, when we talk about there being a couple lifts here, you're really talking about 3 lift stations. And we got that down to 1, which eventually will go away by making it work on gravity the way the topography, says you should build this thing. And that was, based on your staff saying, hey, look, can we get out of having this mechanical problem that we can then push our maintenance budget a different way. So that's how we came to, again, emphasize this pushing it this way. so we take advantage of gravity flow. Okay, the next thing is on this street that we had, which was Maria Drive at the time, the biggest concern that I heard, other than the particular flood pattern was the traffic pattern. And there were a bunch of concerns about how much more traffic we were going to have, and this was going to be a very difficult thing to add another 41 homes into the mix and not come up with a way in which we could deal with that pattern. So what we then did is we then took into the task for our traffic to say, what happens if we then had a relief here? Now, one of the reasons why you have these sharp angles is so you're not, you know, having people being hit by blind corners and that kind of thing. Also, the idea is in the traffic pattern, you're using these as traffic calming measures so that the traffic continues to move just at a slower rate. So instead of going 40 miles an hour and stopping, and then going 40 miles an hour and stopping, everybody kind of comes in here and rolls along at the same space or the same speed, so that you know, we could take care of some of that traffic. Again, that came out of the meeting that we had with you guys. So we're trying to address that concern. Then what happens is when you kind of look at this way and you move this here, we wound up having dead ends that was difficult for the fire department and the police patrol. That's how this winds up getting connected. So along every step along the way, we tried to deal with the city planner, city engineer, city public works, and we were taking our lead from these people, and that's how this map basically comes to this being. Now, the next question that nobody's asked me yet, so I'm going to just jump in and answer it, is what about Mr. Marquez's piece? What about this piece? Why is it that you didn't necessarily consider parcelizing that piece with that, and you left that as a Lot A? I think that's the way it is on your map. Is that correct, Mike? Lot B. This is a lot. Yeah, this shows 3 lots, but I think this goes back to Mr. Marquez's 1 lot.
Doesn't he have some kind of tie-in agreement with you as a developer to stub that for future utilities,
we are stubbing all that, but here's the problem.
Okay.
The way in which his house currently sets on that piece, if we start putting this line, we don't know exactly how he wants, whether or not he wanted to keep that house, whether or not he wanted to move that house, what he wanted to do with that particular house that's on that property. Now, based on where that house is, we would have then split him into 2 lots, not 3 lots. So we would have damaged him if we would have gone on and continued to lot that out. So what we simply did is said, okay, we'll sub you in here for the 3 lots you think you can put on there, but you're going to be responsible to move your house if you don't meet the setbacks. And that's how that came to be. Because what we actually tried to get Mr. Marquez to do in planning this cul-de-sac, we tried to get him to orient to the cul-de-sac and not to this street. Because that's better planning. So then we would then, you know, be able to block this off, and you don't have these kind of coming on, and so now it's a self-contained kind of unit. He never kind of came to the table on that thought process, and that's okay. I mean, it's his property, and that's how they're still oriented this way. We are responsible to put the sewer line in with the stubs. We're fine with that.
Mr. Rosenthal.
Yes, sir.
A question. Up there you have 3 maps. On the map that we have, that is Lot B, 1 large.
Yeah.
That's correct.
But for clarification, so that you guys are, because everybody's counting lots here, so that in fairness for how many lots are there versus how many lots were going to be there, we wanted to make sure that we showed you that this was to be 3 lots. But this actual parcelizing has to be done at a later date in order to help, in order for him to have what he needs on his parcel.
Well, let me state this. That's why he's not in the room, because he had a conflict of interest directly. And I don't mix words. I don't have to. And so with that, I don't know what kind of concern that drew from you Mr. Crinkler and Mr. Martina, but it didn't draw any particularly from me, but it's nice that you addressed it. He originally owned all of that property.
Right.
Okay, so as far as I'm concerned, you know, I support infield. I didn't look at position per se.
Mhm.
He's out of the room because he has a conflict directly involved with where his property is and with this, what was once deemed Marquez Manor, which I think you've renamed as Monte Vista. Drawing in line what you've heard tonight, because I heard you real clearly. You've depended upon staff. You've depended upon public input from the planning commission meetings and vested tentative maps as they were going through the process. But you have residents here that say they were a part of that process. And so I'm trying to see where the ball was dropped, where we have this missing link now, and we're here discussing this, where, as the city attorney did allude to, usually we can come in with this and we're done. But we have what we consider significant changes. It's not nominal. So given what has been addressed tonight, what is your feel in terms of your project?
Okay, I will say that I believe we're in substantial conformance according to the MAP Act. And I believe this is ministerial, and since the city engineer signed off on that, I think that's the right motion, but you have to make your decisions yourself. But beyond that, let's talk about, so that we're good neighbors, and we want to listen to this concern. And I think that's really the thing that we're looking at. I think, and help me, Michelle, because you know more about this particular issue than I do. Didn't we want, and that's why we moved this up forward, to try to either A, do this by slope rather than by wall? Isn't that what we were trying to do? And then we either A, couldn't get cooperation or didn't get cooperation, either our fault or, you know, somebody else's. But the idea was we wanted to slope it off, which would have had us going into your backyard a little bit so that you don't have that 10-foot wall in your way.
Excuse me, the only time we were approached was by Mr. Marquez, and he wanted Claris and I to give him
Right.
that whole back area, which consisted of my corral.
Right.
And he said he would connect us to the sewer and the water if we gave him that whole area, which is a very large parcel. But I've never heard anything about sloping.
Okay.
Not a word.
Okay, well,
You have to understand, giving up that corral means giving up our livelihood.
right,
and our horse.
right. And so, in order to balance that out, that's where the retaining wall comes. Because now I have to deal with it from an engineering point of view.
Well, I don't have a problem with retaining.
Okay, good. Okay, so you don't,
What's the matter?
okay, so what I want to make sure your horses, because I remember having this discussion very clearly with you. And I remember saying to you, your horses are your horses and the horses stay. You were there first, you have a right to have your horses there. People moving in, that's an existing condition. They will be disclosed of that when they buy the house. And they will sign that into their deed. That's part of it.
My problem is a 4 or 5 foot retaining wall, plus another 6-foot fence, plus a 2-story house, which they're gonna be sitting up here, and I'm gonna be sitting down here. Every move I make, they can view. I feel like I'm gonna be put in a prison, because it's going to be a mountain and a molehill.
Okay,
You understand that?
yes, I do. And again, I want to kind of say this because I understand your concern. I'm trying to address this. I know that there's a city standard for fence, correct? Does the city standard anywhere allow what's called a see-through fence, where it's basically wiring wood? Do you know what I'm talking about? You do it a lot in horse property.
We don't have an ordinance that would oppose that.
That would oppose that.
We do not have one. We prohibit that.
Okay, because that's one way in which, and I think that works because of how far these houses are off. If we put just in this area here, put a see-through fence that would, first of all, let the light come through, and it would reduce the 6-foot barrier. Is there a problem if we do that?
It's acceptable to the property, and the city does not have an ordinance that would prohibit that.
Do you know what I'm speaking of? Could you use the mic? Oh, I'm sorry. Do you understand? I'm not trying to negotiate here in the middle. I'm just saying that there are some things that we can do that might help open up the view and that kind of thing.
You know, I think we're at a point now that we have a lot of impasses. We're not going to be able to really do much tonight, so I'd like to continue this at a later time and have staff look at this project and talk to the residents and see what we can do to correct the situation, because I just don't think that we're going to be able to reach any conclusion tonight.
So that we can categorize those impasses, can we enumerate them?
Well, basically what the resident has come forward tonight and stated that these changes were made without their knowledge, and it's my understanding the council feels that they weren't part of these changes also. Now, whether it was part of our staff or not, the council feels still like we were left out as far as being able to make a decision on whether we accept the changes or we do not.
In other words, while you're thinking, if I were to proceed, I don't think that we get a move for an action on this particular item for your final map. And I did take exception to the renaming of the streets based on the original. And I would say, thank you, Bob, because I think that's the appropriate thing to do, because right now, you're not going to get a 3-0 passing vote. That's been kind of clear, because I've heard some distinct opposition. So we don't want to waste your time any more than we want to waste the city's time, because we're not in a position to negotiate or bargain or see what's going to really work at this public city council meeting. But I think the appropriate thing to do to go back to our staff. We have some legitimate concerns. We have some legitimate concerns. And mind you, when we talk and we, in our representation, say what we want, the right words, the terminology has been used. Smart growth. How can we make this facilitate? How can we make it work for the future? Because there's additional infill lots there. And I think I said with clarity that I support infill projects. That is why this is on the map as it is currently, because it was also at a quorum that was down to 3, but it needed the kind of support in order. And I think it might have been a 2-1 because we didn't have that other law we had to abide by. So this has been a little contested from the very start. But in fairness to you, I think that's the appropriate thing for us to do. And if I have concurrence with my colleagues, well, I'll see the nodding of the heads.
Yeah, I feel this can be resolved. I mean, but I think that we have to work to get this corrected so that all parties involved are satisfied with what's going to occur on that property.
Yeah, I think we'll get together with staff and tell them what we'd like to see, and then you can get together with them after that and probably facilitate you getting your final map approved a lot quicker. I would like to commend you for the changes that you have made as far as the traffic direction and the work that you've done. I commend you for that, but unfortunately, there's still some issues to be resolved, and we'll take those up with staff.
All right, I guess I'm going to ask the question again. We're fine with continuing. I mean, that's, I think, what you're asking me. And I would ask the council to continue this, so I'll make that as a request. What I'm trying to get to, and this has been, kind of, we've been following, what I'm hearing is something that's kind of scaring me a little bit. And let me kind of tell you from my point of view. We've worked in good faith with your staff, which, we felt that they were working with you under some kind of direction or policy, okay? And so we continue to work with that. And I'm not trying to throw your staff under the bus, but what I'm hearing, sorry about that, but what I'm hearing is that you're saying to us the direction that we took from your staff was inappropriate.
Let me ask you a question. When you first proposed this project and came before us, did we have the same staff that you're looking at this evening? Was Mr. French here?
As far as our initial planner, yeah.
Initial planner, but in the midst of this, city engineer, we brought back in.
Yes, we knew
Mr.
we were going to
Henry.
have Mr. Henry for the engineer.
Right, and then Mr. French.
Mr. French was not here.
Okay, and in all fairness to you, I understand what you're saying. I understand what you're getting at, And that's why I preferenced that at the beginning of this council meeting for this particular item. Sometimes staff might go out on a little bit of a ledge and figuring, well, I see this is okay, but when it comes to us, we might be delving into it a little deeper, and that's what we're doing tonight. So what I want to say to you, and correct me if I'm wrong on behalf of my colleagues, you'll have a point by point, is what Mr. Krinklaw just referred to. You'll have some direction, and we're not trying to get so far off base. I don't think that's what we're trying to do. We're not trying to say, hey, somehow we want to stop your development there and not have an approval, but we need to work out this glitch that we're seeing. And so I'm going to defer to staff specifically, and you will have that information so that you'll know you're continue to proceed in good faith, and so are we.
Well, I guess what I'm trying to get a little clarification at, it seems to me that the biggest concern, at least if I'm hearing you correctly, is how we deal with this particular area right here.
Yes.
Would that be
Yeah,
relative?
I think the fact that it changed from the original map. I mean,
Yes.
whether you say it did or it didn't, I mean,
No, I said it did.
yeah, well, but I'm
Okay?
saying,
And again, that comes out of listening to the public and listening to your engineers.
So give you a better clarification, Mr. Krinklaw just alluded to the traffic correlation. I like that. I like the thoroughfare. Everything was cul-de-sac, so you got dead ends. And now you've kind of made it a thoroughfare, still with the curves with a cul-de-sac, for slowing down traffic. And we're going to get more traffic through there.
Sure. So what I'm hearing you say, this is what I'm hearing. I'm okay with this part of the subdivision. I'm having a little problem with, not necessarily this, I didn't hear that as being a problem, but with this part is what I'm hearing. And if I'm hearing it incorrectly, because this sounds like where we need to go to focus to get it done.
Well, let me, oh, go ahead, I'm
Excuse
sorry.
me, Tim, I won't
Yes.
beat around the bush. Move the pond back to where it originally was, put the houses along the north side, I'm fine with it. Is that what you wanted to hear? Does that give you the clarity you're looking for, the
Yeah,
direction?
And what I'm trying to say is I don't think we can engineer the site to do that, sir. That's based on your staff assessment.
Well, then we better get together with staff.
Okay.
I think we can call for our mayor and
Thank you.
council member back. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I get a motion for continuance on this item?
I'll make a move that we continue this.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Show that it passes 3-0.
For the record, that's for an indefinite date, not a specific meeting in the future.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Since it's an indefinite date, we have to resubmit a request for an extension of a tentative map. Just want to make sure everybody understands.
That's fine. Thank you.
2-minute break.
Ms. Serpa. Let's take a quick recess as we call back the mayor and Charles Marquez.
Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Wake up.
Ready? Okay, item 10, under regular business, item B, consider requests for janitorial services.
Yes, Mayor and City Council. At the last council meeting, we provided you with a tentative way of looking at the janitorial services. And one of the things that was brought up that we needed to address was the scope of work. We came up with kind of an initial price tag for that, but what was actually going to be done for that price tag was what was going to be what was in question. One of the things that I'd like to kind of bring up also is that we were looking at, when we're looking at these janitorial services, as far as the police department is concerned, as I indicated in my report here, is that we have issues that we have to deal with. One is the security of our building and the information that we have therein. Part of it is by law as well, because we would have to, because of the database, state database information that we have in there that we just can't just lock completely up, is and to maintain that, we have to follow the state guidelines, which say that the individual has to be either fingerprinted and or escorted throughout the building. And escorted throughout the building with these kind of tasks would not be cost effective for us. What I'm looking at is trying to limit this down to a small firm one or two person firm, mainly because we're looking at the fingerprinting, and if you go with a larger firm, we're looking at having to their staffing may change, and we could have other issues of people going through our building. This is also, they would want to do this work when the building is closed, so it's, so escorting them throughout the building is not really an option for us. I don't think that was really too much of an issue, with the city hall and the fire department as much, but that was, it may be. I see there's discontent over there.
Yeah,
So,
I'm gonna comment on that while you're on it.
okay.
My comment would be, for instance, report writing, officers come by, take a break. When the janitorial service is going to be facilitated at the police department because of those issues that you bring up,
Mhm.
I think it would behoove us to have, well, they're not gonna, I don't wanna see them with keys, to that extent, so they need to be allowed in, because they're not an employee of the city. So there would be some restrictions that I would be concerned about, and I just heard that with City Hall. So maybe sometime they may be available, you're talking about after hours, but what about during working hours? Is there services available?
I can tell you, I did not find any services that were wanting to do this while a business is open.
Okay.
And
But I guess it
didn't
would
have-
be similar to like the people that do the bank.
That's correct.
Because that's where all the money is.
That's very true.
Yeah, well, exactly, and that's the.
And I can tell you, most of the sensitive information that we would have would not be, isn't just lying around. Our evidence room is well locked and secured, and that would not be one of the areas where anybody would get access to. Our report writing area, well, the officers have to log out and such, so their computer screens don't reveal that kind of information. And as far as leaving reports out, I think that would be, that may happen from time to time. But I don't think that'd be an issue.
Do you have surveillance cameras in there now?
No, we do not.
I think if it's Tim, correct me since it's your field of expertise, if we had a surveillance camera and they're fairly inexpensive with a tape on it to monitor those areas, it would give some assurance of people not doing things.
Yeah, I don't know how much that would raise this proposed budget, but I was more or less stating in terms of if they know when they're coming, if the officer's out in the field or there's no call for service per se, that they can use that allotted time to perhaps have some downtime at the police department with report writing or catching up or to that extent where an officer can actually be around to facilitate that just in person, not following them around or escorting, as the chief
That's correct.
alluded to, but just be there in mere presence, whether they're writing a report or watching a training video or something to that extent.
I would prefer not to have our staff inside the building. My goal is to actually keep our staff outside the building on patrol and such. What I'm looking at is trying to limit our liabilities that we may have to, like I said, I'd like to keep it to a one or two person operation. So if you have any issues, anything that comes up, you're not having to go very far to quash those issues very quickly.
I think we have that same concern. We like to have them out on patrol. We like to have them on the street as often as possible, and we discussed that at length.
Yes.
But there is time where they come to the station, where they go for lunch, where they are downtime, because they're not patrolling that time continually. So what I'm suggesting is if we can be accommodating to some degree with the police department, that they could make that available. I'm not talking about babysitting per se, but making useful of that time because they do have downtime. They're not always out on the street. They congregate from time to time, whether they're meeting to discuss issues of policing. So I'm making that suggestion based on what you just said, Mr. Crinklow, in terms of having an awareness of the occupation. That's a suggestion that I think that you could put in memo form.
We could see if we could try to accommodate that. I mean, it also depends on calls for service as well.
And that's understood.
Because we are small, and if a call does come down, as we had this weekend of call for service, we want to make sure that we have those calls for service. We don't have extended times I don't know how long they're planning on being in the building, how many hours or.
You have a resistance to this, Chief, for whatever reason. I'm hearing it, I'm feeling it. And I don't know why, but I mean, it's just a suggestion that I think it could alleviate some of the concern.
Okay, we could
facilitate that.
I will come to a compromise to the point that we will try to accommodate having the officers
Otherwise,
being
we
present.
could forego the janitorial services and make do with what we're making with, because as the proposal that it is before council is as such that I'm making that suggestion in order to facilitate this. So
I think the chief's goal was to get somebody and do a thorough background check on them and make sure they were an honest person.
yeah, but
Make
even
sure the
with
guns
that, you still want to be sensitive to.
Oh, sure. Make sure the guns are put away, and obviously,
Yes.
if if a call comes in, you can't say, "Well, I'll be there in 10 minutes when the janitor leaves."
Right,
you can't.
right. Exactly.
I'll be right there. I have confidence in the chief that he's on the right track to.
Yeah. But just to alleviate that altogether, I didn't see where it was posed.
We will try to accommodate that where available. So. But getting away from the police department, one of the things as far as I guess somewhat in our favor is we're looking at trying to keep this within our current means. We're not asking for any additional funding for this service. And I also attached what work we are looking at having done. The substantial change really is with the fire department. In talking to our fire chief, Mel, he was looking at making a substantial change with his staff removing the tables and chairs and then putting them back and moving this down to like a once a month type of service. So you can see that the price came down substantially, but that also incurs a lot more on his staff to be able to get that done. He would also, Public Works would still be assisting on certain things. They would only be taking care of the floor in this instance here. Floor, they would take care of the kitchen, both offices, and the bathroom floors.
You're saying the Public Works Department would still be taking care of these?
It will be taking care of the trash and those kind of
The simple stuff.
very simple things. If you can see, there's.
Did we at least look into how much those services would have cost?
Yes, we did. Now those on a monthly basis. We're looking at this on a monthly basis. So we're looking at trying to move this back into a weekly basis as far as some of the sanitizing of the restrooms and the throwing out of the trash. Their building isn't used, but 3 times, 4 times a month. So.
Mel, your meetings are when?
Once a week.
Mel, would you like to address that?
No, I just wanted to get a clarification on those other services that you said the Public Works Department was still going to take care of. Did we get an idea of what those costs would be? Because if we're going to have somebody coming in anyway and the West Side Consolidated Fire District is going to pay for half of those, I'm wondering in a sense, basically, those man hours that Public Works would be coming into the fire department to be paying for, essentially the Consolidated Fire District could pay for half of those costs. You know what I mean? If we're going to go ahead and do that, why not just pay for the additional stuff, have our Public Works crew out doing the additional stuff they need to do, and have the Consolidated Fire District paying for half of these additional costs?
Okay, are we looking at this still on like a... Ernie, maybe you can tell me how many times a week do they go to the fire department, or is it weekly? Is it once weekly? Once a week. So I'd be looking at trying to kind of revamp this for the fire department to see if they would take on those additional duties on a weekly basis.
I was just wondering, if we're going to have these folks come in and take care of the fire department, why not just have them take care of everything for the fire department?
Okay. Well, we were trying to keep the
seems
cost
like-
down. That was one of the things that we could do.
That's why I was asking.
I haven't checked on that cost, to be honest with you, and I will have to
If we could
define
find out,
that.
just-
We can.
If it's not much more, I mean, we might as well have them completely take care of the fire department and be done with it one time while they're there.
Okay, the other issue that Mel brought to my attention too is Consolidated Fire may or may not want to participate in this. Is that what you're telling me? Okay. So I was looking at if they do not participate, just as it's written here, that would bring up the needed funds from $4,500 to $5,700.
Mike, do you know if they have a choice in the matter?
What's that?
Do they have a choice? I mean,
I'm not familiar with
The
that
contract.
relationship with Consolidated Fire, so.
Should spell it out. We'll look into that, yeah.
Okay.
That agreement not only spells out the costs associated, but as well as maintenance of the building as well. And I'm sure there's some maintenance that's included in that building.
Okay.
I'm sure of that.
To try and expedite this a little bit more, would there be like a dollar figure that you'd be looking at to try and stay within?
We could
Or
say-
just, or duties that you're looking at having in there? What would be kind of like I guess, a deal killer is if we're looking at, as far as price constraints for those additional services?
Well, the amount you just gave us is up to $5,700. Is that correct?
Possibly. That's the maximum that would be out to the city if Consolidated Fire does not participate.
Participate at all. So we could always do a not to exceed amount. But
Yes.
Here's a question I wanted to ask, Chief, in regards to contracting for janitorial services.
Yes.
Are we looking for bid from one janitorial service that could facilitate all of this? Or, because they could schedule themselves at different nights for the fire department, the police department, the city hall? Or are we looking at multiple janitorial?
We were trying to have this combined and try and keep the cost, if you add more buildings on there, to see if we can get the cost down by a volume.
By a
Because
volume
we
for
look
one
more
janitorial
attractive.
services.
That's right, we look more
And-
attractive because they're able to get more funds and work. So, yeah, we were looking at trying to keep that down to
Well,
one
my
service.
suggestion would be that put it out for bid as a total contract.
Okay.
For all these services, and then we'll have an acceptance when it comes back for a janitorial service to provide these needs. I think that just only makes sense.
And that's including the additional stuff at the fire.
On a
department.
weekly basis?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, Chief, on the fire department, the $200 a month, that's the city share of it, or that's the total share?
The $200 monthly, that was the total amount.
Okay.
Because it
for
was
another-
400 and something dollars before.
For another $80 a month, we can get the same services as City Hall.
Quite possibly.
Right?
Mhm.
Yeah, so I agree with Charles. For $80 a month, we can take Ernie's guys and have them do something else, which are always behind the 8 ball anyway, so it sure helped him
Mhm.
out.
That was the original one. That was before, when you weren't having to move the tables and chairs. And that was without the extra janitorial service, so.
We might be able to save some costs in City Hall too.
Okay.
Judy
And
thinks
that
we
was a-
don't need 4 times a week.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was one of the things too I had some questions on, because it just says various accounts throughout the budget. I was hoping for a little clearer idea of where these funds were coming from.
I'll let the city manager address that portion.
We would probably divide it along the very same lines we do the rest of the staff in City Hall, which is 1/3 general fund, 1/3 water, 1/3 sewer fund. For those upfront areas, for my staff, I think Michael's, part of his budget comes out of redevelopment, part of mine comes out of redevelopment. We'd follow the same guidelines. I think it would be a minority it would come out of the general fund for City Hall.
Did you ever get us an estimate on what it's costing us right now with city staff to do all this?
To do this, what it would cost us?
Well, I mean, what they're doing right now, did you ever get us a cost on what?
We could put it in terms of hours. How many hours a week does Public Works spend in doing janitorial work, do you think, Ernie?
I'd have to refer to the chief. I don't know how much time he spends at police.
Yeah, we get about 30 minutes 3 times a week at this point. And I don't know what time is spent at City Hall.
I know at City Hall, they spend about an hour in the morning.
To do some gardening and watering and trimming outside as well. It's not all spent inside the building.
Okay, yeah, I'm just saying that's how much we get actually inside our building itself.
Okay, Jim, what do you want to do since everybody keeps referring back to everybody else here?
Well, let's just set a contractual amount as far as I'm concerned. I would say up to, I think the amount Chief came up to was $5,700. You guys are facilitating yours with contract service. I have the contract here. So this is for City Hall and the fire department, is that correct?
That's correct.
I would
Just round it off?
Yeah, I would move to approve the amendment on the budget up to, for janitorial services, up to, not to exceed 5,700.
And to get back with us on the,
Well, if Consolidated Fire does not participate in this, we're looking at also an additional $80 for the fire department, so monthly. So we're looking at, that would not be included in that $5,700.
Well, let's hope that we get some additional, but we'll leave it at that for now. Because when I look at something that says various accounts throughout the budget, you know,
That's my wording, I'm sorry.
Well, and that's okay, but you know, we have to have an accounting for funding, revenues versus expenditures, and all these thousands of dollars that we look at, you know, 5,000 here in the general fund, a few thousand there. By the time we get to the end of the fiscal year, those thousands adds up to several tens, maybe hundreds of thousands. So, you know, I like to, our accounting sense of things need to be a little bit more accountable, but I'm willing to go with this.
Okay.
well, if we could find out as well at the next meeting on this agreement that we have with the district as far as
Consolidated.
what their thing is on maintenance.
Okay, we had a motion on the floor.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
My motion was?
5,700.
I'm sorry, I'm forgetful.
5,700.
$5,700, so I can
Not a penny more.
put this out,
I can remember that.
Put it out for
out
bid.
to bid is what I'm looking for. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
as a package.
Package deal. Check with Consolidated and
Yes.
see what's going on there. Mel could help you. Okay, item C, consider request for Fall Festival Committee.
Hello again. We're fast approaching the next fall festival, and we're looking at, this has been an event that's been established for over the last 30 years. It's an ongoing event.
35.
35, to be corrected. And the analysis of this is basically we're looking at the same street closures that we're looking at as in years past. We're looking at the Sunday parade with the same parade route. There's no real big changes as from last year. The requests that they have are very similar as last year. They're looking at waiving the business license fees for vendors that are in the park, exclusive use of the city park, waive the permit to have alcohol in the park, and authorize the use of the entire city park as a beer garden. This was done about 3 years ago. It's been successful. We haven't had any incidents since we've done that. We're looking at, as far as the cost of this event here, we're looking at, I'm figuring about $2,600. Currently, it's my understanding that we have about $1,000 budgeted for the event, but I may, is that correct at this point, or that's what I was told by finance?
$1,000.
$1,000.
That's
Yeah.
following the format of previous years, but as you recall, the council has more discretion this year to
Okay.
promote community events.
Okay. I'm looking at $2,600, what we're looking at for the total. That would be police services, that would be the price of the barricades, use of public works personnel, and so we're looking at, well, I was looking at a possible shortfall of about $1,600, and it would be my recommendation that whatever the council would like to budget for that, any amount over that the council wants to deem for that event would be passed on to the Fall Festival Committee. Do you have any kind of questions regarding this event? Parades, street closures, anything of that nature?
Looks like there's no questions.
John, did you want to say?
No. Yeah, I
Everything's
guess
going well. Phone's ringing off the hook. Everything's under control.
Good.
Unless anybody else has any questions. Get your wine and cheese tickets right here. Oh, okay.
Well, are we going to bring it back for discussion on this particular?
I think, as John said, we had discussed in the budget to up all the events, to help all the events out. So I'm sure once that's identified, that it'll help out in this cost.
Yeah. Well, I know one of the things when we were going through the budget was I specifically requested additional funds for community promotion. And at that time, I had said that there are events such as this one, as well as the fun run and others, that, you know, seem to be the dollars that we spend are a drop in the bucket compared to the type of community promotion that we get and those folks coming back into our community after visiting. And again, with the $5,000, my thought was that it was going to be spread out with different events throughout the year. And I would request that, you know, this shortfall that is here be made up with some of those $5,000, because it's not like the Fall Festival is going to go away next year. This is just going to continue to become a bigger and bigger event for our city. And I think the more we help this Fall Festival, the better it'll get. So that's my recommendation, that we pull $1,600 out of that $5,000 that we allocated for the community promotion.
Is that a motion?
Yes.
I'll second.
We have first and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item D, consideration to rescind resolution number 2005-28 and approve resolution number 2005. Next, the number amending the city's personnel rules.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I mentioned in the staff report, with the conclusion of the memorandums of understanding and other negotiations with represented by employees, the personnel rules need to be updated in 3 sections to agree with those
Negotiations.
and the agreements that were reached. Thank you. The first one was a sick leave deduction. As you recall, the police officers who work a 411 shift, when they are off a day, they get currently charged 11 hours. They're only accruing 8 hours a month like everybody else. So they came and asked to only be charged 8 hours. I looked into this and found out similar cities do this practice, Patterson specifically. Even though they work a 411, they're off for a day, they're charged 8 hours, the same as their accrual rate. That would be a revision to section 603 of the personnel rules. Also on section 701, the same rule applies. They take a day, they would be charged 8 hours to match their accrual rate to their usage rate. And the language already in this section has to do with partial. We wouldn't change the partial days. If they take anything less than a full day, they would be charged hour for hour for the amount of time they took. But if they take a full day, they'll be charged the 8 hours for vacation or sick. The third section is management leave. Has been changed to reflect the discussions we had on management in order to promote recruitment and retention of qualified management and supervisory personnel. The management leave has been increased for some classifications. And the personnel rules have been further specifically changed to identify the various job titles. In going through this process, we found there was 3 groups that were vague. There was management, there was supervisory, and there were confidential. We laid out exactly which positions fall under those classifications in the new revised personnel rules. And those are the 3 changes, and I'll take any questions you have.
Question.
This is existing language. Employees may use this allotted management leave prior to its actual accrual. That's existing language.
I'm looking. I'm going over there. If it isn't underlined, yes, that is existing language. But it doesn't add any more to the allotment for the year. What it does is.
So say you could be credited the 10 days before you've accrued the time, and if you leave or were no longer employee, then we would deduct it from your pay.
That's exactly what it says.
That's what it reads to me.
Yes.
Okay.
Further questions? If not, some direction.
I move to rescind resolution number 2005-27 and approve resolution number 2005 next to number amending the city's personnel rules to reflect the changes.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item E, consideration to approve resolution number 2005, next number, adding the classification of senior accounting assistant and approving a departmental promotional recruitment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As you know, 3 of our 5-member finance department have been vacant, creating quite a strain on the existing staff. The account clerk, the accounting assistant, and the accountant are all vacant. Actually, the accountant clerk recruitment has been completed, but the sole remaining accounting assistant in the department has taken on enormous responsibilities and will be counted on to take on the training of the new people and assist in the transition of the accountant. This request before you would add the classification of a senior accounting assistant to supervise the other accounting assistant and the account clerk, streamline the operations of the front office, make decisions about the proper allocation of resources, and also to primarily train everybody on the use of the computer system and on proper office procedures. We're fortunate to have a long-standing employee there who is available and holding down the fort. So the second part of this request is to conduct a departmental promotional recruitment in accordance with the personnel rules, which say specifically that a recruitment can be done for not only city employees only, but to one specific department. And since there are no other departments that have qualified people for this level of position, in my estimation, I'm asking for a departmental promotional recruitment to fill this position if you approve adding this classification to the approved classifications for the city. And the job description is attached along with the recommended salary level. This would remain a represented employee in the operating engineers union, and I've spoken to the union official about that, and they have no problem with that, of course. They've always wanted to protect their membership, but it was felt best that that would be where this position should fall. And I'd be happy to take any questions.
As you say in your report, it'll be divided up between water, sewer, general fund, and we have balances in there to make it balanced for this year.
Yes, all those positions are divided in this manner. So this is how that would be carried out.
Other questions?
Yeah, on the, as the mayor alluded to, there's going to be a $4,560 amendment in total. Now, with the downgrade of the financial services director position down to accountant, have we figured out what the total amount is that?
Just in dollars and cents?
Yeah, just the bottom line.
I don't have that in front of me, but this, I believe that the account clerk and the accountant absorbed that salary.
Okay.
And this would be an additional cost.
I got you. So the applications are, so we're looking at 2 September for these two of these positions being closed?
The accounting assistant and the accountant are open till September 2nd. The account clerk closed a week and a half ago. We've conducted interviews, and we've
testing and
interviews, and we have selected a candidate for the account clerk.
Okay. Now I know, as you stated and the staff report states, there are 3 vacancies in the finance department. I mean, how have we been coming along? I mean, that's 75% of our staffing is gone. I mean, are things falling by the wayside? Grants?
I would say that we've done an enormous job in keeping our heads above water. Judy's taken on the role of doing the payroll.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to finish out the financial statement requirements for the year just ended. Emily is busily training Becky on filling in at the front counter. Emily, I think, has taken the greatest brunt because of the nonstop traffic in terms of foot traffic and phone calls, as well as the utility billing that does not abate. volume is up. She reminds me that we have the same staffing there than we had when the city was probably 3/4 of its population or smaller. I guess to answer your question, they're doing a good job, but they're wearing thin at the edges, and I think that they're looking forward to getting some help.
Further questions?
I guess, if I may, Mr. Mayor, I just will comment. We supported you. I know that Charles had his reservations. He certainly spoke about his reservations when we went from finance director to breaking it down to these different positions, 3 different positions. And we supported you wholeheartedly with that. And I just say, to your wordings, us keeping our head above water, that the accounting of our finances, I think our fiscal responsibilities way heavier than any other. One of the things that I would like to see out of this, because you're kind of got the rudder of the ship when it comes to the employees, and I will commend you because I think some of the things that we've done in these considerations, for instance, additional management days off, the contract negotiations we just went through, things of that nature where the funding sources appear to be there, I will say that I commend that. With one little caveat, if I may, projected income, projected funding versus actuality is where we're dealing with when we come down to the end of the fiscal year. And that's why I made the comment as I did about various accounts. And I think the chief, spoke up and said that was his use of words. But the accounting of the fundings will come to a head at some point. I would like to have an intermediate, if I could, or for the council, to just where we are, update with our treasurer, with the fundings, versus accounts receivable, versus what we've paid out. And to give you an example, you brought up grants. Materi Field, for instance, we spent almost $100,000 there. And I know that there was one grant that we were waiting for funding on. Whether or not we received that, that accountability of the funds, that the money's already been spent. But if we've gotten it back in, did we get our VLF check? I thought we got ours. Did we?
Yes.
That funding source, just name the funding sources that have come in, the receivables, and give us a little bit of an update on that. It'll give me a greater comfort level as we proceed throughout the fiscal year, because at some point, all this is going to catch up with us, but I don't want us to get too far out there with some of these additional expenditures we've been approving meeting by meeting, even since we've approved our budget.
I always want to know the ones we haven't got.
The funds that we haven't got, yeah. But otherwise, unless I don't know if there's any other discussion on this, I'm ready to move on.
There's no further discussion. Tim?
I move for the approval of resolution number 2005, next to number, adding the classification of senior accounting assistant and approving departmental promotional recruitment.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Item F, consider approval of contract for police services for Augustine OLM Festival.
Yes, Mayor and City Council, this is a very similar contract as we had last year and the one that was provided to you from Hollister when we did their Independence Day run. We're looking at a contract here. I hope you've had time to review it. Basically, what we're looking at is in our city attorney, we made one change into the workers' comp, and to kind of greater provide less liability to the city. We're looking at direct cost, as we did with the Hollister contract, with Gustine paying for that. They're looking at their OLM festival, additional manpower. That event is scheduled for September 9th to the 12th. There would not be any additional cost there as far as liability. We're looking at, we did beef up the workers' compensation clause, and as Gustine and Newman are still in the same risk management association pool that pulls from that same fund. So as far as any kind of risk, that would be something that we'd be pulling from that same RMA.
I've attached the contract. If you have any kind of questions regarding this, I'd be more than happy to answer those. It's nice to be kind of a resource for other agencies, and then when our needs come, we'll be able to draw from them as well.
Hey, Chief, one quick question.
Yes.
This is a clarification.
Mhm.
On the background at the very front, it says the festival is scheduled from the 9th through the 12th. Is that when our police are going to be?
No, they're only scheduled to be there for 2 days. That would be the
Okay. Yeah, I just want to make sure, because on page 1,
yeah, the
on
11
terms of the agreement, it says.
they're going to be there from the just 2 days, and they'll be there for about 10 hours durations on each day, and that'd be the Saturday and the Sunday. I believe that's the 10th and the 11th.
That's it.
Okay.
Further questions? If not, some approval?
I so move for approval of contract for police services for Gustine OLM Festival.
Second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Item G, consider appointment of member to the Architectural Review Committee. Wake up, Michael.
Mike?
I didn't know if you even knew it or not, but at the last planning commission meeting, as you may know, Ed Ford has officially resigned from the planning commission to take on additional duties as part of the VFW. As part of that, he no longer could contribute the amount of time he felt was necessary to the planning commission. As the planning commission representative on the architectural review committee, that seat became vacant as well. So at the last meeting, the architectural review committee recommended that Tom Applegate sit on that committee, and that is the recommendation that they are forwarding to you for appointment.
I'm assuming Tom is on another trip, otherwise he would have been here to lobby for his position. Oh, okay. Sitting on an iceberg.
Alaska somewhere.
Any questions about this appointment?
And I move that we appoint Tom Applegate as a member to the Architectural Review Committee from the Planning Commission.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. We'll call him in Alaska. Bob, call him tomorrow. Item 11, items from the city manager and staff.
Mr. Mayor, last Wednesday, the 17th, the Plaza and Downtown Streetscape Committee met to hear Ward Skimper's request from Ace Hardware about mitigating his tree in front of his sign. The committee moved to approve a tree removal consideration policy if the applicant would replace any tree removed with 2 other trees in the downtown streetscape. With that, he said he would propose where he would move his tree and add another tree and bring it back to the council along with a cost-sharing plan on how that's going to be paid for, who's going to pay for what. And he wasn't ready for tonight's meeting.